Good morning. Good afternoon. Good evening, everyone, wherever you are today. I'm so happy to be here and be the facilitator moderator introducing the sixth Q&A session of the on-demand virtual course Initiation into Spiritism. As you may recall, this course started early this year with the focus of bringing discussions based on the book by Teresina Oliveira. How does the course work? Well, each week on Sundays at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, a new lesson is released, and we're almost at the end of it. But Spiritist speakers from all over the US will address each one or two chapter of that book. I'm happy to be a part of this live dialogue around the contents of lessons 26 through 29. And thank you for joining us today in this session. So, just a reminder of all of us who will be watching this live stream. We have received a couple of questions, but want to please submit your questions in the chat window. Would love to hear your comments or any other questions that we may have for today. I would like to welcome each presenter to provide a short summary of their lessons, and we'll start with Jussara Korngold, who will provide a summary of lesson 27, Alan Kardak, the codifier. Jussara?
Hello, Marcia. Hello, everyone that is connecting with us. It's really great for us to be here studying Spiritism. We are doing this course, the United States Spiritist Federation, providing this course in initiation into Spiritism. And today, like Marcia said, we are going to be giving a brief summary of the some of the chapters that we have presented, and then the Q&A. And I was talking about Alan Kardak. Why is so important for us to know or to have a notion of who Alan Kardak was? First of all, of course, Alan Kardak was not his real name. It's Hippolyte Léon Denisard Rivail, according to his baptism, because there was an inversion in the name according to this birth certificate, as we mentioned there. But he was a very committed person in terms of studies. He had engaged himself in several pedagogical activities. He was also able of speaking different languages. He was a translator. He was part of the Academy of Science in France. He wrote important textbooks, arithmetic, French grammar, papers on public education. So he was really focused on education. And it was only later in life, when he was in his 50s, that he came across this new, let's say, sort of entertainment that were happening in Europe per se. It traveled from the US to Europe, that he learned about the turning tables. Of course, at the beginning, because everyone was taking that, more as a way of entertainment than anything else, he was not interested in getting to know or go through this kind of experiences in a séance, as they called. But one friend that he had convinced him to go with his wife, Amélie. He was married in 1832 with Amélie Gabrielle Boudet, also a scholar that was really a huge presence and strength in the life of Kardak. And when they both went and attended this seance, they, especially for Kardak, he could see that, as opposed to how people were advertising that the table were replying to questions, in fact, there was an intelligence behind all that. And he concluded that was that intelligence were spirits that were communicating using in order to convey messages and information about the spiritual world. So, in this way, Kardec started researching and went through lots and lots of material that were already collected in other groups and organizing all of this and to afterwards put it all together in what we call today the main books, what we call the codification of Spiritism. So Alan Kardec is important for us because, in fact, he was the one that was organizing all of this and brought it to to the world in a way that it could be uh, more easily understood for all of us. But he's not the author per se. So that's why, especially in his first book, he calls it the Spirit's book and not Alan Kardec's, or not, creating any new name or things like this. But he went exactly with what was going on during that time, like the time that we were talking about spiritualism. So he just changed it a little bit to characterize the what Spiritism was about, and brought all of this to us, the information from the other side of life, the spirits, but that are the souls of human beings when we cross over. So, and the name Alan Kardec, because he was very famous in his time, and he didn't want people just to buy books thinking that would be books on a particular session of education, like we said, grammar, etc. And so he was advised to use, by the spirits, to use a name that he had in a previous incarnation when he was incarnate in France in the region of Gaul, and he was a druidic priest, and he used the name Alan Kardec. So we will be addressing more and more things when we will have our chance to the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Jussara. Great synopsis of a great lesson, by the way. But let's move on. And I would like to now invite Sergio Santos, who will be here to talk a little bit about his lesson, the three revelations. Thank you so much, Sergio.
Thank you, Marcia. Thank you, everyone that's watching. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everyone. Uh, well, my part starts on the part four of the book, and it goes through the moral progress and with its inevitable. So that's really interesting. My chapter, chapter 29, actually talks about the three revelations. But before anything, Teresia was very careful to define what is the divine revelation, why they're important. Um, what we have to understand about that, and all these details that we're going to cover a little more, I think, on the questions and get to it, because it's really important to understand why the meaning of everything before we deep into all the revelations. And this chapter is very important to understand, because all the revelations that she talk about Mosaicism, Christianity, and Spiritism. So the three revelations that she speaks of, she acknowledged many others, there's thousands and millions of others revelations throughout history. But those three are very important on the sense that she's very specific on, because divine revelations are truth, bring by God, they cannot be denying each other if that's the point. So Teresia goes into the study saying, getting that uh, development of ideas of like, hey, Moses brought this law, Christ brought that, the same law, correcting and improving and bringing more of the moral teachings to that part of humanity when we are progressing. And then Spiritism came to actually go back to Christ's basis and go back to Moses and actually bring all of those in another light with another evolvement that we have as a civilization, as humankind, and as souls, individually speaking. Uh, there was never a conflict between them, and that's one thing that's really important to really emphasize, because all those are just, it's almost like you get a little information, then you get a little more of the information, and then you get more and more information of the same topic. So we're going to delve a lot more into it, and we're going to be really talking about the details of everything in a bit. Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sergio. And I'd like to bring now Anna Moreno, who will be talking about the last lesson of this series of 4 lessons, which is Spiritism and its practice. Thank you so much, Anna.
Thank you very much for having me. Hello, everyone. So, my chapter was chapter 30, and it talks about the 3 pillars of what Spiritism really is about. In a nutshell, it is a philosophical doctrine with on a scientific basis, and that shows us the moral consequences. There is a lot of questions about spiritism and spiritualism, and I believe that this chapter specifically really clarifies in very much detail, defining, what is a spiritist science. So it's these 3 pillars: science, philosophy, religion. And if you dive into the science, which is basically going down into the spirit, the mediumship phenomena, when we talk about philosophic aspect, we really streamline some of the life and death questions that most of us have. Where do I come from? Where I'm going? Why do I suffer? What is right? What is wrong? Who is God? And then the third pillar, nonetheless, very instrumental for us to know how to live well. It kind of shows us how to base our life on Jesus' conduct. What exactly means without really um, external efforts, without hierarchy, just kind of an unveiling. When he said, I am the way, the truth, the life, what exactly really meant. So when we look at Spiritism and Jesus, is basically taking out all that allegorical language that we can see in the New Testament and clarifying for us, kind of bringing it to the modern days. Also, understanding that when Jesus was with us 2,000 years ago, he was talking to people that were suffering, that were slaves, that didn't have a lot of academic background. So Spiritism really brings a lot of new things for us to understand about Jesus' teachings. And the third with that, but the third point that I want to bring, that it's nonetheless extremely important, is kind of taking some of that mysticism out of all the mediumship that Jesus had, like second sight and telepathy, his ability to cure, and the miracles, which we see some of that somewhat being done today. And besides that, Terezinha is very good, kind of structuring these 3 pillars, and then helping us with the curiosity. What do I really find in a spirit center? Because there's a lot of, um, I would say, woo-woo questions, in terms of what is inside, and what do we do, and kind of really kind of dives down into prayer groups and some work on the mediumship to help others, some therapeutic passes, and study groups mostly. And so that idea that there will be rituals or altars or some type of special clothing and mysticism. No, that doesn't exist. And she's and the chapter that you can find on this course, chapter 30, you can really learn all about what to find and what not to find. But in a nutshell, continue what Jussara said. Kardak really came to bring Jesus back to light, showing us what his teachings we're about, and how we should live our life better.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Jussara, Sergio, Anna. Love it. Very, very quick and dirty, right? But we're going to move on to the actual meat of our time today, which is addressing questions that we have received, and anyone new question that comes in, we'll address to those. And I'd like to do maybe get one of you at each time so that we can hear everybody. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with Jussara. Let's see. Jussara, what was the process? And I think you mentioned to that already, but maybe you can explain further to the person who sent that question. What is the process for Revival to become Alan Kardak? Who was the responsible person for codifying Spiritism? You are on
Maybe
mute?
we
Okay.
can go on a
Yeah.
different angle because we talked about, Rivayo
Mhm.
Allan Kardec in terms of a name, but we can
Mhm.
talk about in terms of a person. How was he, when he was this professor, this pedagogue, this researcher, this scholar? And one characteristic that we can see even before he got in touch with the aspect of this that we call today spiritism, of the communication of the presence of spirits, he was a very serious person. He was a very committed, organized person, and true to his beliefs. So for those who had the opportunity to watch already the movie that Wagner Assis, the director, put together about Kardec, if you haven't, go to Netflix and watch it. It's absolutely wonderful. Um, you see how much he was defending everything that he thought was going to bring more progress, evolvement to the fields he used it to act. In this case, in terms of education, the educational system, always, pushing to go beyond what we had. So now, all of a sudden, he sees himself before a totally different world. Now he sees himself in the world of the invisible, one that had no organization whatsoever, that people were doing whatever they could do just to summon, um, spirits, so to say, when they came to the realization that was spirits in a very trivial way. And Kardec per se, so when he becomes Kardec and when he embraces and he sees the seriousness of all that, according to his personality, according to his way of being, the methodology that he would use for his the courses, this educational system in France, he would apply the same thing. So this process, we see that was a new world for him, but at the same time, what was important is to see that immediately he recognized the idea that he had to bring the same kind of characteristics, the rational mind, the organized using the methodological way to even go further in all of this research. And that was the transition when he thought that he knew so much already about the world. There was a whole new world for him to become aware of, to learn about. And this is when he brings himself, his personality, his traits, but at the same time, he broadens and he's open to broaden his views and go deep into that. That's, poetically a way to describe his transition.
That's awesome, and I love what you said. Right, he became someone else. He took on a pseudonym, right? nom de plume, I guess. But he also brought with him all his traits, right, Josada? Everything that made Rivail what he was, he brought it over to this very big, huge mission for us. But anyways, this is awesome. So let's go see the next question. And I believe it's would like for Sergio. Sergio, you already start talking about revelations, but can you perhaps zoom in a little bit into what makes a revelation first, and then what makes a revelation a divine revelation? Can you share that with us, please? You are on mute.
Thank you for the question. Sorry. That's the first part of the chapter. That's fantastic, because we never think how deep that question can be. First, because we had to step back a little bit and to understand what revelation is. To after that, go like, what's divine revelation? So that's really is two different things. Revelations can be, hey, any spirit can talk, like you said, like they were calling any kind of spirit to talk on the nuances and in the table turning in restaurants and bars and things like that. So that can be any revelation in the sense that spirit will come and talk. It because it takes from the veil. It's an information that comes from the other side and all of that. So that would be what revelation is. To become a divine revelation is a little it needs a little lot more than that. To become divine revelation has to be a few criteria that Teresia put it here in the book that was fantastic for me. It was like it's always first is a divine providence authorized that for us. It's something that they think as the higher order spirits that humankind needs to learn, needs to be instructed on those information for some reason. So it's something that like is going to bring some progress to humankind here in on Earth. So that's a little it gets a little more deep than that. And she gets three topics here that I'm actually looking at them just so I don't uh, misquote. Let's say this way. It has to be made by high order spirits. So it has to be from in name of God. It has to be through prophets, mediums, spokesperson, people that will be inspired by. It not necessarily has to be one or the other, or any religion calls in a different way. So it's really beautiful that it's like, but it has to come from higher order spirit and is in the name of God. So if it's in the name of God, we assume it's truth. So it's based on truth. It's all about the truth. You can get the revelations throughout history. The three, especially the three ones that she studied on this chapter, she talks. It's all truth. They do not deny each other, and that's the misconception that we get in society nowadays. Not ours throughout history. I'm sorry. That's like we think that we already think because it's something a little different or a little not to the letter, we think is fighting, and that's not what it is. It's just bringing a new concept or bringing a new nuance of the truth. It's like that little saying, like if you I'm looking at the six and you're on the other side, you're seeing a nine, but both are seeing the truth.
Mhm.
So that's something that we had to really think about it because all those religions all have their truths, and when it's from God and it's from a higher order spirit, it is a divine revelation. Um, One thing that revelations also do respect and something that we have to be really be careful of, especially when we have any prophets or any mediums or spokesperson talking, is they do respect the level that we are intellectually, morally, the who we are as human beings right now. Christ did not bring the science that Spiritism brought because they won't be able to capture on the time of Christ the knowledge that we could capture now, like that we understand now. I think Anna is going to talk much more about that part, but I think it's going to be amazing. Can't wait for it. And that's what's the thing. It always respects who we are and where
Mhm.
we are in history and where we are in our lives. So the things like the revelations. We're going to talk more about that. I'm going to pass back because I think we have a lot more. I can get inspired here and talk a lot.
Well, you're spot on, Sergio. And I just wanted to take a moment. This is a little bit of flight of fancy, but when we talked about revelation versus divine revelations, right? And you talked about the divine revelations come from higher spirits and from God, and it brings the truth. Whereas revelation is anything that's taken away the veil of whatever that is, and it can be from any, for example, any spiritual channel. And I just remember, and I never forgot that a interview on the radio that they were talking about the fact that. So many movies today, right? We talked about Kardak, the movies. Rusada mentioned earlier about Kardak, but beyond being a spiritist movie, there's so many spiritist messages, spiritualist messages today. And if we can talk about Hollywood as the powerhouse of production of knowledge, and how perhaps, Sergio, those are revelations, right? Inspired stories, fiction, maybe to bring about, to break down those questions that perhaps Anna can talk when she talks about spiritism and its practice. But let's see what's the next question that we have. And I think this came in earlier with Paula. Hi, Paul. I think you're here today. Thanks for joining us. And Paula's just said that she just found Spiritism a year ago. And her question for you, Anna, is when I pass over to the other side, besides the work I do for God, sorry, will I also be able to continue my spiritist studies? I love the question, Paula. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula, for participating and talking with us. That kind of makes the dialogue more interesting, the learning for all of us. So a few things. As you well stated, as you know, as I pass to the other side, what it means is that the death of the body doesn't end our life. So we are eternal beings. And as we go through this bridge, let's call it this way, to the other side, to the spiritual realm, we continue to be exactly who we are. So we bring our faults, our vices, but also our qualities. We bring who we are, on a sense that the curiosity, the interests, the values, the moral values, everything continues to be the same. The other thing that is important to remember is that God basically governs all the universes, all the different realms, the ones that we know and the ones that we do not know. So whatever we do here, we can continue to do wherever we go, with an interesting aspect that we will always find what we are looking for. And this is true here while we are alive. For example, if you ever got pregnant, you know that when you were expecting, you would only see expecting mothers around you. It's just very funny. Like I would never see anyone pregnant. And then the moment that I decided to get pregnant, everybody around me was pregnant. I was like, what's going on? Everybody's pregnant by me. So, or when you want to buy a car, you have that, beautiful red car of, that, model. You see that car all the time. So somehow we kind of turn our sight, our focus to a given direction. As we go to the spiritual realm, as we return home, because we know that the temporary part of our eternal life is here, not there, we will continue to find what we are looking for. So, to your question, if my interests are in becoming a better person by studying, by learning, by helping others, that is exactly what's going to happen. If my interest is around drinking or using drugs, it's exactly what I'm going to find over there. So it's important for us to really trim our habits while we are having our time here, the opportunity to growth. We can basically collect as much knowledge as we can, academic law knowledge, but also moral law knowledge, because this is really the baggage, the luggage, the carry-on luggage that we can take with us. And then yes, we can continue to study, we can continue to help others. We see that the superior to spirits, the more evolved spirits like us, they work all the time. They work for others all the time. And if we think about Jesus, he continues to work before, as he governs our planet. He worked on the creation and the setup of planet Earth, and he continued to help us until today. So work never stops.
I love it. What a commitment, right, Anna? Commitment to whatever it is that you want to focus. So, Paul, I love the question, by the way. I mentioned this before. And I love the fact that perhaps when we all pass on, Paula, we're all going to be studying Spiritism together. But anyways, let's see what's the next question. And that is for Jusara. Jusara, could you please tell the person who sent the question, what is the Spirit's book? And how did Alan Kardak work on compiling the Q&A questions contained in this book? And I think, Jusara, I think the focus on the question may be not only what in the world is the book that you refer so often, the Spirit's book, what is the importance of that, but also what was the process, more of the system. You mentioned he had a methodology earlier, so maybe we can focus a little about on that as well.
It's very interesting, this question, because let's think about each one of us. If we had the possibility of talking to someone from a different planet, or in this case, someone that has already crossed over, right? When we think about it, we will think, oh my God, I will have so many questions. I will want to know so much about it. But the thing is, most of us, I think, will wind up saying, if it really happens, am I going to be able really to formulate all that and in a way that I will ask all the questions that I want to be able to have all the information that I would like to have. So I think it was very clear for Kardak at this point in time that when realizing that he was dealing with a totally different new world for us. I mean, even if we have as basis some religion or philosophy that will talk about life beyond, truth is we still have very little information and in relation to what is exactly this life from beyond. So in terms of what he could gather at that point with the information the spirits were already giving and trying to put it in a organized way, and really when we start studying the codification of Kardak, it's the study of the organization of the books per se merits a different chapter, because he was so organized that, for instance, in the Spirit's book, he started talking about God, the creation, the universe creation, the creation of spirit. So he goes into this methodology of not organizing the thoughts, of going from the first step to the second one to the third one. And this is what is pure genius when we think about it. And we can only understand from that Kardak himself was a very evolved spirit, superior spirit in this sense, in order to be able to do that. So this is how he came about all the this way of presenting to us in these 5 books. And remember, there are over 30 works of Kardec for us to study and to read. It's not only the 5 books, okay? But we normally just talk about the 5 books of what we call the codification, the set of body of knowledge that we have in terms of spiritism. But it was like that, observing, asking, using different groups to reply to the same questions, comparing, organizing, and of course, him being a scholar, a professor, having all this pedagogical way, he was able as well to put it in a way that it could reach people from all avenues, or from all places of education as well, because he used it as simple words, and he conveyed the idea very clearly, so everyone could be able to understand them. Yes, sometimes they are hard because they are very new, but it's not because of a pompous vocabulary or something like that. He made it in a way that he brought the message as the spirits presented as well. And this is how we have this work and all the other books works from him.
Jussara, can you tell the audience what are the 5 books?
The spirits books is the first one. Then we have the mediums book. Then we have the gospel according to spiritism. The 4th one is what is called Heaven and Hell, trying to understand, this world of spirits. And the 5th one, that is Genesis, starting with God, going through all the process of the world's creation, and what is expected for us as well.
So for everyone here, there are 5 foundational books, right? Mm-hmm. But it doesn't end there. There are over 30 books authored by Alan Kardak, and it's once we start to read and study, you just want to study more, right? So this is awesome. Thanks, everyone. So let's go and check the next question. And this is for you, Sergio. What is the purpose of these divine revelations? Can you talk about it? I think you mentioned they're true, right? They seek the truth, but can you talk a little bit more about why do we even have those come to us?
If we go back to the...
Yeah, got it.
Oh, sorry. Used to this. I'm behind the camera kind of guy. Well, like we were talking before, the truth and what the revelations are per se, like in something that they're very specific concerning, like it's something that humankind needs, that information on Earth, and that's why they come true. So that'll be the main purpose, the information to come true. But we also have to think that we are not elevated spirits yet. We are still learning. We are toddlers. We are like babies learning on the ways of moral teachings, on the ways of Christ, on the ways of God. So we're still learning. We're very, very, very young on the evolution. And because of that, we do a lot of not so good things. Let's say it this way. Uh, Throughout history, you see a lot because of ignorance or bad faith. Like we change those revelations, we misinterpret these revelations, we made it all about us and what we needed at that moment. We focus on our material needs in our own imperfections, let's say this way, our childish desires, let's say this way too. So we don't put ourselves so low, and that's why the revelations keep coming and keep improving. Hey, you were very babe on the Moses time, and you got the 10 Commandments. It's very like straightforward because you need some more of a, like a more paternal figure of God, of like being very rigid, and you have to do this or that, or you have consequences. And that happened on Moses' times, and that's okay because we need it. We were with multiple gods, believing in many other things and any other things, and Moses was inspired to do this way by God and by the spirits around him. And then Christ comes and say, "Hey, God is not only the paternal figure. You have the mother figure. You have the beauty of forgiveness. You have the beauty of love unconditionally. And you're always going to be loved by God." And that's a it sounds different, but if you read the Ten Commandments, it's actually the same thing, saying the other way around, like seeing in a different perspective. He pretty much took the negative from the Ten Commandments and like in transforming positives. Love your neighbor. Love, love, and love. That was about Christ. And so that's the beauty of the second, like this on those three revelations has to be the second. And the third to come spirits with more details because we are evolved on a scientific level. We are much more evolved than we were in Christ's time. We have much more knowledge of many other things, but we needed more knowledge scientifically of how it works, how those um, veils kind of work. We are still learning details. We're still studying it. We're still grasping the meanings of how this mediumship happens and how it goes and all of that. But still, it's a revelation for us. It's a revelation for us to go back to God, go back to the morals, go back to Christ. The gospel according to Spiritism is a letter to love. It's a letter to to talk about improvement, talk about self transformation, inner transformation, improvement, seeing how Christ saved his way, he said, metaphorically speaking, or in allegories, or in Christ's way of speaking, I say this way. And then the Spirit's book, hey, let's analyze that. Let's try to bring this knowledge to more factual ways or scientific way, something a little more to the society nowadays or something more on that note. And that's what spiritism comes in. Like it brings this body of knowledge that's scientific in the way, like Ju was saying, like the Giselle said, that it was all about like he was a scientist, so he codified in a scientific way, in a proper manner, in a correct way to document things. But all the documentation was with love and was about love and about the teachings of that God, of love and forgiveness. So I'm sorry I'm saying love so much, but it is what signified the gospel for me. Like in it's it's essence. It's all about this, and that's why we have so many revelations. Going back to the questions, like because we take the knowledge that we got it from Christ and we twist it a little bit through history. If we study a little more, we'll see that we did a lot of bad things with in the name of Christ, things that Christ would never ask us to do or even think of us to do it. But He forgives us because He loves us, and He knows we need more teachings. You can't, going back to the analogy of being toddlers and kids, you can't punish a kid without love and teaching. You have to actually teach and respect their limitations and respect their process of learning, their process of growth, their process of being and becoming one. So that I think I answered the question. If not, please let me know.
No, I think you did. Spot on. Thank you. But the things that you came when you're talking about the revelations, they come because we somehow corrupted. I don't know if you use that word, Sergio, but you misinterpret, right? We make references to a materialized, very from a immature spirit, imperfect spirits that we are, and corrupted into a lesson. And historically, you alluded to the Crusades, the Inquisition, so on and so forth. Those dark periods of humankind in the name of Christ, where heinous crimes were committed, right? So thank you. Thank you. Let's go ahead and time is flying, everyone. So let's move on to the next question. Hi, Anna. Do you want to take that on? Awesome. What are the three aspects of Spiritism? So I think it is very closely discuss what Sergio was just bringing in, right?
Yeah, so aligning to what Sergio was saying, so Spiritism is known as the third revelation in the Gospel according to Spiritism. In the way that we see, it's much more than a religion. So I would define it, as Kardak did, in three pillars. There's the first pillar that talks about this spiritual science. So that's based on the mediumship book. There's some on Genesis as well. And what it does is that it goes deep, studying and explaining the mediumship phenomena. The second pillar is the philosophical one. And as I talked a little bit before, it answers some of our life questions, those very philosophical, deep questions. Where do I come from? What's going to happen with me after life? Why do I suffer? Why I'm here? Why my family is like this or like that? What do I need to do to stop suffering and things like that? The third pillar is the religious one. And the religious pillar is a reminder for us of what Jesus said, but also a complement to what he taught us. So going back to the revelations, that means that it's only giving to us things that we can understand. So the same way, looking at children, I would not teach my 4-year-old complex calculus math equations because he's not ready. So I will give him some crayons and a piece of paper, maybe some Legos, but not, life and death decisions. And on the other hand, I would not give my 10-year-old, for example, the right to drive because he doesn't have the knowledge and responsibility to understand the consequences. So the same thing comes with the teachings that we receive from Jesus. And that's why it comes to us at a given time, at a given level. So diving down into these three aspects, the scientific aspect, so the first pillar of Spiritism talks about the origin, the nature, the state, the purpose, the kind of the whole environment of the spiritual world and how it relates with us here incarnated. So why is that important? Because we are all connected. There's no them and us. And we learn that from the Spiritist book when we read that this relationship and the interference of the spirits in our lives is much larger than we can ever think. So the science side of the Spiritism was done through experiments, and Jussara was talking about the turning tables. So Kardak looked at those tables. The tables would fly, they would flip, they would land in one foot, and then he would think, well, this is probably some type of magnetism, some type of electricity, some force, because this type of knowledge at that time has just been revealed. And then we see that this revelation only came when the humanity, the civilization knew about magnetism, not only from Mesmer, but from the other scientists, but also electricity, because we could understand that was beyond magnetism, that was beyond electricity. So he goes, tries to figure out what's going on. Curiosity, turning tables. It was kind of like a happy hour entertainment at the time in Europe. And we're like, that's strange, because suddenly there was a dialogue. And then he goes like, this goes beyond magnetism. This goes beyond electricity. Because if I ask my table here, what's your name? The table is not going to respond anything. So if I am able to ask intelligent questions and receive intelligent answers, there is an intelligence behind it. So this is this experimental method that Kardak basically used at his time. He was at that time an atheist. He didn't have any religion, which kind of gives another level of confidence, thinking that he was not biased. So what he came that was basically to observe, to compare, to analyze the phenomena so he could understand what exactly it was. He wanted to investigate and understand the cause. And when he did that, he basically seeing the facts, he was able to look and come up with the definition of what was the cause of all the facts that they were seeing. And then after lots of exchange of information with the spirits, he basically compiled a list of laws and that describes kind of why we live the way we live, the consequences of our actions and the interaction with them, and so forth. The second pillar is the philosophical pillar. And as I was saying briefly in the beginning, it talks about this very profound questions, the principles of life and death, and provide us as well information about the afterlife. And all those questions can be found in the Spirit's book. The Spirit's book, it's a very interesting one because it's a book that is organized through questions and answers. And just one thing, Kardak didn't have like this mediumship of writing or receiving spirits. No, but he was very well organized. He was the best project manager that I have ever seen, because he was able to compile questions that came from 1,000 different sources to answer one question. 1,000. And when I say 1,000, I'm not making it up. I'm talking 1,000. And then he would compile and see within the ones, which ones are answering the same thing. Understanding that this is not a binary science, right? Unlike engineering. I'm an engineer. No. So if I ask like an open question about something like what is climate change, 5 people who know climate change may answer with different answers, with different words, but the same answer. Different words, same answer. That's exactly what he did with 1,000 different people for each question. That book that he created about 1,000 questions, he received the answers from the spirits. So again, the answers didn't come from Kardak. The Spirit's book is called the Spirit's book because the answer comes from the spirits, not Kardak. And then the first one is a wonderful question, because he doesn't ask who is God, because that would make the assumption that God could be a man, a woman, or a being just like us. He asks, what is God? And then the answer is the creator, the primary force of everything. Everything. So in this book, we find who we are, where do we come from, where do we go from here, what are the qualities of God, what are the laws, and we learn that these divine laws, they are called divine because God is perfect. This is one of the premises that he found out from the spirits. So if it's perfect, it doesn't change over time. So these divine laws are laws that will never change, and they are the same. And these are the laws of the universe. And as we learn more and more, as we develop our science, our material science, the science that we learn at school, we can find the same mathematical equations within our body and also in the macrocosmos, which is amazing. Why? Because this is a divine law. The third pillar, which is probably the one that we need to pay more attention right now, is as it is a guide of how we should live our lives. Because it talks about the moral values. It reminds us about Jesus' teachings. And this you can find on the book Gospel According to the Spiritism. We see that Spiritism doesn't have any hierarchy. For example, we are blessed to have Jussara here among us. Jussara is a walking Wikipedia. So she has really a vast knowledge, flood of information. She's our leader, or someone that help us organize things here in the States. But she is respected because of what she does. She doesn't carry a title. In the Spiritism, we don't have, like, for example, a pope. We don't have priests. We do not have any special outfits, not a badge. Because the idea is that we are here to serve. So we should not have special titles per se. Like Jesus showed us that the one that wanted to be the biggest one in the spiritual realm should be the one that serves more. When Jesus says that I am the way, the truth, and the life, which, by the way, this is one of the books that I highly recommend people to read. It was psychographed by Chico Xavier, and it was dictated by Emmanuel. It's a wonderful collection. Chico Xavier is another, invaluable contributor of the Spiritism, because all the 500 books that Chico Xavier, and I will repeat, 500 books that Chico Xavier psychographed through his wonderful mediumship without even making one penny. He was born poor, he died poor. He has lots of bestsellers. One of them is Astral City. The book is a bestseller. Now it's coming out the second one, which is Astral City 2, which is The Messengers, the second book. His books basically collect or give us more information about the spiritual realm. And there's this book that is called The Way, the Truth, and the Life, that was dictated by Emmanuel, that takes one little verse from the New Testament, in some cases the Old Testament, and develops into a whole chapter. So we can see how much information we can find in the Bible, how much information Jesus left us that we couldn't really grasp. And this books that Jussara was talking about, the 5 books from Alan Kardak, these are the type of books that are books to be studied. They're not books that we should be reading in a hurry. No, because every time that we read, we find something new. We have the impression, oh, I didn't see that. because we are in a different moment in life, and we are different person that we were 2 years, 5 years ago. So there's that saying from the I think it was a Chinese saying that the water in the river is never the same, and that's who we are, right? So we keep changing every day. So going back to the question in terms of the three aspects of spiritism, so it is a spiritual religion with no formalities, with no dogmas, with sacraments, no priesthood like we found in other places, but it's very much connected to Jesus because it unveils his language. It complements his teachings. It explains his mediumship, and why he did things. So there are three pillars: the scientific, the philosophical, and this religion one that basically is formed from the moral aspects.
Awesome. Thank you, Anna. I we're getting to the end of our talk today, but I was hoping, Jusada, I know Anna talked to you about your leadership position within the United States Spiritist Federation, in your work as an author, translator, and now with the International Spiritist Council. Can you perhaps, before we close, Jusada, talk a little bit about a parallel between the struggle, the challenges, the difficulty that Kardak went through when he published those 5 books? And we keep talking about books, but it's really a body of knowledge, right? Spiritism is that body of knowledge, and how that there's a little bit of a parallel, if not so hard, maybe easier, I don't know, for us to do the same here in English.
It's a very complex question, this one, because I was even thinking about what Anna mentioned about the red car, right? If it is not on our focus of attention, we don't pay that much attention, and we don't care that much about this. And unfortunately for us human beings, we are still much more connected to everything that impresses our senses than to think about what comes next. And what comes next, after me leaving this earth, me leaving this physical body. So our behavior is very much the one of still, a child that want immediate compensation. And that was not different, of course, in the time of Kardak, not only to mention, a new vision of everything, a new vision of seeing or expanding what Jesus has taught us, not anymore to see our Creator as a God that punishes. That was still prevailing, this idea throughout, the first centuries and following until the 18th, 19th century. Unfortunately, the way that it was interpreted everything that Jesus brought and put it much more with a material view than a spiritual view. And Kardec found in his times a lot of challenges to have to deal with, bringing about a new idea, talking about an invisible world. So from from the challenges we see today, we can only imagine how it was 165 years ago, how harder it was then. And I think the main point that we have to focus at this point is really to try to do the work in ourselves. We have so much knowledge, we have so much understanding, information from so many different philosophies, and not only Spiritism, that can lead us to value more a spiritual way of living, a more compassionate way of living. Just, recently we went through, an invitation to change completely our lifestyle and how we could see each other and even see how equal we are, because the virus was affecting each and every one, and all the countries. It was not choosing nationality, gender, anything like this, ethnicity, nothing. It was all over everywhere, and we all had to go through the same kind of regimen in life. So now we have to learn from that and start taking advantage of all this knowledge that we have and apply it to ourselves. It is not an easy process. That's why, it's so much easier to change the outside than to change the inside. But we are getting there. We are getting, I think, there is always progress, and progress is happening, even if we are not seeing that much. We are planting a field. And in the first stages of planting a field, we don't see, the tender leaves sprouting, but it is happening. So I think the most important message for us all is: do not dismay, do not give up working in yourself. The changes are there. I'm sure people are recognizing this. Like Anna mentioned again, the river has changed. The waters are not anymore the same. We may feel the same, but we are changing. And if we pay attention, we will be able to each time more grow and develop and believe and trust in the world and a human being. The changes are everywhere. And we are the ones now responsible to inspire more people to continue doing this work, and the new generation to take over from us and make this whole more compassionate way of living, embracing a way of living, a fraternal way of seeing each other prevail in our world.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jussara. I think there's so much content, so much inspirational words from the three of you. I appreciate. I just wanted to call it attention here to the fact that as we're wrapping up, not only today, but the final chapters of this book by Teresinha Oliveira, we will have about 3 and only 3 classes coming in the next 3 Sundays, followed by a Q&A session, and then another 3, another Q&A, and this is it. So I'm already missing in advance our opportunity to learn together, right? And Jussara will be back next Sunday with a discussion on mediumship, communication spirits. And I really look forward to that, Jussara. Really appreciate that. Please know that we had a 4th speaker who couldn't be here today, Marcelo Neto, who told us a lot about the Lord's Prayer. So as we come to a conclusion today, and I want to say thank you, all of you who have been here with us today, we will close listening to Marcelo, his message about the topic, but look at it as a prayer to us. Let's ask if we can have that, his video that he sent to us now.
A collection of Spiritist prayers, we learn from the benevolent spirits that the form means nothing. The thought is everything. And Alan Kardak further states that we should pray according to our convictions and in the manner that touches our soul the most. And with the Lord's Prayer, Jesus established that anyone can have a heartfelt conversation with the Father above. He allowed invisible walls to come crashing down by presenting us with our divine essence, our divine filiation when starting the prayer with Our Father who art in heaven. It is under Matthew chapter 6 that we find Jesus bringing us the key characteristics of the Lord's Prayer. Let's go to the first key characteristics of that. Is that the prayer should not be mechanical, should not be shallow, should not be empty. If we go to the second key characteristics, our prayer should be humble, should be heartfelt, and expressed with faith, with sincere faith. Alan Kardak states under the chapter 28 of the Gospel according to Spiritism that this prayer is the most concise prayer because it basically summarizes all of the duties of humans toward God, towards themselves, and also towards their neighbors. But because this prayer is so short, and the simple fact that a lot of people recite it almost mechanically without truly thinking about it, many don't realize that there's a very profound meaning behind it. Let us stop and remember that nothing taught by Christ was in vain. Not even a single word. And according to the Apostle Paul, and we're going to see this on chapter 27 of the Gospel according to Spiritism on item number 16. And when you say when we pray, and then I put it over here, when we pray, each word should be important. Review a thought and strike a chord. In short, St. Paul says, it should cause one to reflect. This is the only condition in which the prayer can achieve its objective. Otherwise, as Paul says, it is only noise. Let us say it together, but let us pause as we go along repeating this prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Or some people say, forgive our offenses as we forgive those who offend us. Do not let us fall into temptation, but deliver us from all evil. So automatically we find that whether we kept our eyes closed or open, we basically addressed some key aspects of this prayer. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Addressing our filiation, our divine essence, recognizing God's greatness with reverence. If we go to the second portion of this prayer, thy kingdom come, it reflects on how God has given us in the innermost conscious the awareness of laws that when fulfilled would make human beings happy if they would only observe them. If we go to the question 621 of the Spirit's book, when Alan Kardak asked, where is God's law written? The good spirits answered, in the conscience. And Alan Kardak keep asking again, but since humans carry God's law in their conscience, why does it have to be revealed to them? They have forgotten and disregarded, said the Spirit. But God has willed for them to remember it. Let's go to the third portion of this prayer. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. As we understand, doing God's will is to obey His laws. and to be obedient without complaining against his divine decrees. And we understand the difference between resignation and obedience. If we again visit the chapter 9 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, blessed are the meek, or blessed are the peace-loving, we're going to see on item 8, the Spirit's talking about obedience and resignation, that I would like to read on this item number 8. Let's read it together. At all points, Jesus' doctrine teaches obedience and resignation, two very active companion virtues of meekness, although people erroneously confuse them with the negation of sentiment and will. Obedience is the consent of reason. Resignation is the consent of the heart. Both are active forces because they carry the burden of the trials that insensible rebellion lets drop. Look what the Spirit brings to us. The coward cannot be resigned, just as the proud and selfish person cannot be obedient. Jesus was the incarnation of these virtues, scorned by materialistic antiquity. He came at a time in which Roman society was perishing in the bankruptcy of corruption. He came to make the triumphs of sacrifice and renunciation of the flesh shine in the bosom of downcast humankind. It's a beautiful portion of the gospel according to Spiritism. Let's go to the other portion of the Lord's Prayer. Give us this day our daily bread. Give us nourishment for maintaining the strength of our body. Give us also spiritual nourishment for the development of our spirit. Forgive our debts as we forgive our debtors. Forgive our offenses as we forgive those who offend us. This is a big one, right? Very big one. It is as if saying each one of our infractions of God's law is an offense against God himself. This offense against this law that is written inside of our conscience. We are offending us, a debt contracted that we will have to pay sooner or later. So for these, we beg the forgiveness of your infinite mercy, and we promise to make every effort not to contract new debts in the future. Do not let us fall into temptation, but deliver us from all evil. So as if stating, give us the strength to resist the suggestions of evil spirits who tempt us away from the path of goodness by inspiring us with evil thoughts. So as we can see, this prayer is beautiful, insightful, it's complete, and truly, truly necessary. We just have to observe that we are not pronouncing it mechanically in an empty way, but rather saying it with a heartfelt feeling and sincerity of our spirits. Well, I know it's a very short. We're trying to put it in a small, this limited time that we have, trying to do this, bring a few comments about this very important prayer. I hope you guys enjoy the moments that you're going to have with our peace. They're going to answer most of your questions. Much peace to all, and thank you very, very much.
Not be here, but sent us such good words, including our prayer. So, with that, everyone, I would just want to wish every one of you a wonderful, wonderful week. And we'll see you, Josara, next Sunday when we're going to continue our class. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for being with us.